Welcome back to the Infinite Podcast. I'm here with Simon, diving into some meaty stuff today. The blend between brand and product dominance in marketing. It's crazy how companies now have to juggle keeping their identity strong while pushing product innovations. Simon, do you think this balance is tipping more one way recently?
Oh, totally. It seems like there's this mad scramble towards brand personality now. Companies are like, forget our actual product as long as we have a cool meme or viral TikTok, right? But honestly, when I buy something, if it breaks in 2 days, no amount of funny tweets is going to make up for that. What's your take, Joe? Flip or flop for real engagement?
Yeah, that's a good point. There's definitely a flip side to banking too much on just brand personality, right? If the product doesn't hold up, all those memes won't mean much when customers start complaining. At least that's how I see it. You think companies are going to realize this balance is getting off kilter, or will they keep riding the viral wave?
Hmm, I kind of feel like some companies are just going to ride that wave till it wipes out. It's like, why fix something if it's not totally broken? But seriously, there's got to be a wake-up call when products start failing and all they got is a flashy brand. Remember the whole hoverboard fiasco? Big hype, but then whoops, they're catching on fire. Maybe 2024 will push them to get back to basics. Solid products first, sparkles second. What do you reckon, man?
Yeah, exactly. Like, remember that most people want value for their money at the end of the day. Consistent quality is what builds real trust and loyalty. If every time you buy something it's a gamble, no matter how cool the brand looks online, you're going to think twice next time. 2024 might have to be the year companies get that wake-up call, realigning that balance between dazzle and dependability.
For sure, Joe. It's like if your product is a dud, it doesn't matter how slick your Instagram game is, right? People talk, and bad news travels fast these days with social media. So companies might start, I don't know, focusing on their craft again, making stuff that lasts. Kind of old school, but maybe going back to basics isn't such a bad idea. Keep the flash, sure, but back it up with something solid.
I see where you're coming from, Simon, but there's another side to it. Consider how powerful a strong brand can be on its own. Some companies, they thrive mostly on their brand appeal, like Apple, right? It's not just about the spec improvements anymore. It's their brand that has people lining up for hours. In a world filled with options, that emotional connection might actually trump pure product performance. So maybe sticking to a brand-focused strategy isn't all that bad if done right.
So for those just tuning in, we're chatting about that tricky balance. Companies got to find between their brand and the actual products they sell. It's kind of like, do you throw all your eggs into making cool ads and hype? Or should you make sure what you're selling doesn't fall apart? Some companies like Apple, they kill it with brand loyalty, having folks line up for hours, even if it's just small updates. But then there's a risk. If the product stinks, no amount of good branding is going to save it. So yeah, it's all about finding that sweet spot. Right, Joe?
Yeah, exactly, Simon. Finding that sweet spot is crucial. It's all about balance, right? So speaking of balance, do you think consumers are becoming more savvy to these marketing tactics? Like, are they starting to demand better products along with the cool brand image, or are people still mostly swayed by branding alone? What's your take on that?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Consumers these days, they're not just buying into a brand anymore. They're much savvier. It's like they've done their homework, right? People peek behind the curtain now, checking reviews, expecting more bang for their buck. There's this stat floating around that about 81% of consumers do online research before purchasing. And companies can't just slap a cool logo on something and call it day. Guys like Patagonia and REI, they get it. They sell the lifestyle, sure, but they also back it up with quality that fits the narrative. So yeah, with social media making everything transparent and folks getting wise to marketing gimmicks, brands have got to deliver on all fronts. Coolness factors in, no doubt, but it can't be lipstick on a pig. What are people really looking out for in your eyes, Joe?
Yeah, you're spot on, Simon. It's like with everyone being so connected today, Consumers not only have access to all the info they need, but also they share their experiences far and wide, like super fast. So brands really need to watch it. Like if your product falls short, someone's going to tweet about it, share a blog post, maybe even make a viral TikTok showing it failing. The stakes are high because poor reviews can kill sales just as much as good ones can boost them. And companies like Patagonia, they thrive by understanding that it's not just one or the other. You got to walk the walk and talk the talk. That blend is what keeps them ahead. Like in your opinion, do most companies see this change coming, or are they still playing catch up?
Oh man, Joe, you really hit the nail on its head there. It's like some companies, they totally get it. They're on board, adapting fast to these savvy consumers who don't just gobble up whatever's thrown at them. But then you got others that seem kind of stuck in the old ways, you know, just pushing out products and hoping their shiny ads will cover up any flaws. It's kind of like, are they listening to what people want or just ticking boxes? Makes me wonder, what'll push those lagging behind to step up? I mean, do you think it's going to take a few more viral fails for everyone to get with the program?
Well, Simon, it's an interesting point, but let's think about the flip side. So, like, not every company out there that sticks to traditional methods or doesn't jump immediately on every marketing trend is necessarily behind. Uh, there's a valid argument that stability and sticking to proven strategies might actually resonate with a certain segment of consumers. Like, some folks value consistency and reliability over being trendy or viral. And let's consider this. Innovation and trends can be risky. If a company tries too hard to adapt or overhaul its brand and product offerings too quickly or too often, it can lead to confusion among customers or a dip in quality. Maintaining a strong foundation in what they do well, stable products without frills, can benefit companies in industries less swayed by trends, like maybe utilities or basic consumer goods. It's kind of like strategic cautiousness might not look as flashy, but it can pay off in customer trust and long-term stability. So, yeah, those lagging might actually be playing a different game altogether, huh? What are your thoughts on that angle, Simon?
Oh, Joe, that's kind of like saying slow and steady wins the race, right? But then again, in a world where a sneeze goes viral in minutes, can the tortoises really keep up with the hares? It's a wild race for sure.
Simon, that reminds me of this one time when I was a kid. My dad decided to buy this super cheap lawnmower because it was like half the price of the big brands they had at the store. Sure enough, a couple months down the line, it just completely fell apart. Meanwhile, our neighbor's pricey but high-quality mower ran for years without a hitch. It got me thinking about how sometimes spending more upfront on something reliable can actually save you trouble and money in the long run. It's kind of like companies today. They might spend more on building a solid product, which might not get quick hype, but it pays off with loyal customers over time. It's a slower game, like you said, turtles in the race, but man, it proves worthwhile. So yeah, there's definitely value in being the tortoise in a world full of viral hares, isn't there?
Well, sure, Joe, that lawnmower story rings true. But, let's not forget that today's market isn't just about lasting, it's also about leading, right? In this rapid fire world, being first, or at least super quick, can snag you the spotlight, which often translates to sales, even if it's just short term. So while I get the tortoise approach, we're kind of dealing with a different beast here. Brands are facing off in this high speed digital arena where being visible, uh, even for a moment, can mean a lot. It's not just about making something sturdy, it's about making something people want to talk about now, right? Even if it means adjusting course more often. Ain't it more like adapt or die rather than slow and steady these days? What's your take on balancing these aspects without, dropping the ball either way?
Absolutely, Simon. You hit an important point about the need for speed in today's market. It's like, can you be both the tortoise and the hare? Maintaining that balance between innovating quickly but also ensuring product quality isn't sidelined is a tightrope walk. Brands have to be dynamic, yet robust enough to keep their customer base confident and loyal. Exploring that middle ground between brand appeal and product excellence might just be the future of marketing. What do you reckon is the key to mastering that blend?
Right. So, Joe, diving into this crazy world of hyper targeted ads, ever notice how sometimes it feels like your phone is listening in on your conversations? Like you chat about needing a new pair of boots, and bam, every ad is about boots. It's spooky, but kind of hilarious how those algorithms have us all figured out, huh? What's the weirdest ad you've gotten recently that made you go, okay, that's too much info?
Oh man, Simon, talking about those hyper-targeted ads, get this. The other day I was just joking with a buddy about how we're too old to try skateboarding again, right? Not even an hour later, I'm scrolling through my feed, and what pops up? An ad for beginner skateboards geared toward, let's say, the more experienced crowd. It's like that specific timing made me laugh out loud because it felt like my phone wasn't just listening. It was straight up eavesdropping and then, poking fun at me being an old man thinking about skating. They nail it sometimes, but it's also a bit of a wake-up call. Like, how much do they really know, right? What about you? Any similar weird experiences?
Oh man, Joe, that's a riot. Skateboarding at our age, yeah, maybe not the best call, but props to those ads for keeping hope alive, right? Makes you wonder if there's an ad out there targeting guys who debated bringing back mullets or something. But it gets you thinking, like, how close are we to having these algorithms really predicting crazy specific stuff about us? Next thing you know, they'll be suggesting retirement homes right after you've searched for how to stop knee pain. Ha ha! Seriously though, sometimes I need less of a nudge from these ad guys and more of a, hey, we get you, but relax on the creepy vibes. Don't you think it kind of pushes the boundary between helpful and just plain invasive?
Totally, Simon. It's like these ads can be spot on sometimes, right? But there's definitely a line between being helpfully precise and just spooky. It's kind of endearing how they try to cater to those quirky sides of us, like recommending weirdly specific things based on a one-off conversation. But yeah, it does feel invasive at times. I mean, talking about crossing the line, it's not just products anymore. I read somewhere that some ads are starting to suggest life changes based on your browsing history. Like if you've been hitting up a lot of fast food places or something, suddenly you see ads for diet plans or gym memberships popping up. It's kind of humorous, but also a bit much. They've got the data, they know way too much, making it kind of funny, but also a tad unsettling, don't you think?
Yeah, Joe, it's like they're trying to guide our life choices with ads now, huh? It's funny when you think about it. Like, one minute you're ordering pizza online, and the next, bam, ads for health food subscriptions and treadmill discounts pop up on your screen. They kind of play that nagging little voice in your head, but through ads. But isn't it sort of odd, though? Kind of like having a nosy neighbor who watches every move you make and then gives unsolicited advice based on what they think they know about you. Leads me to wonder, where should we draw the line? And how much personal touch is too much before it gets just plain creepy? What's your boundary there, Joe?
Oh, Simon, yeah, you're nailing it. There's actually a lot of chatter about this in the marketing world right now. So let's break it down. These ad algorithms run on big data, right? They analyze vast amounts of our digital footprints, like websites visited, purchases made, even how long we look at an item without buying it. Now throw in machine learning, and these systems are not just reactive, they're proactive, predicting what we'll likely want next based on patterns they've observed. For instance, if someone consistently buys eco-friendly products, they'll start seeing more ads for green tech or sustainable brands without even searching for them explicitly. But here's where it gets dicey and why people feel watched. Because while this can seem helpful, there's a thin line before it feels like an invasion of privacy. Like you said, where do we draw that line? Well, regulations such as GDPR in Europe are trying to give users more control over their data, but it's still a wild west out there. So my personal boundary? If I'm getting ads that guess unsearched health conditions or family plans based on my age or other sensitive aspects, that's way over the creepy line for me. It's like keep it light and funny, sure, but back off the heavy stuff, ad guys.
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like, at what point do they start sending ads based on the dreams we haven't even had yet?
Haha, exactly, Simon. It's like, let's strap on those tinfoil hats because it's getting a little too sci-fi in here. Next thing we know, they'll be pitching us products in our sleep. It'd really be next level, like something out of a Black Mirror episode. Talk about knowing too much, right?
Yeah, no kidding, Joe. Like, it's funny, but also kind of not. Picture this. You mumble about pizza in your sleep, and the next morning, bam, your phone is suggesting breakfast pizzas. But here's where I push back a bit, right? While all these targeted ads can feel like they're borderline reading our minds, there's got to be a spot where we say enough is enough with the data digging. It's hilarious on one hand, sure, like getting ads for weird gizmos you talked about once at a party. It gives us those what moments that are total gold. But then it's like, where does the humor end and the creepy begin? So as much as we laugh, should we maybe be a bit more freaked out? What do you think, Joe? Are we just laughing off something that's actually more dystopian than we realize?
Yeah, Simon. It's definitely a mix of amusing and alarming, right? I mean, we chuckle because these scenarios sound so exaggerated, they're almost comedic, like a sketch out of a satirical show. But on the flip side, it's kind of sobering to think about just how much data is being crunched to make those ads so eerily accurate. The humor really acts as a soft buffer against the underlying reality that our privacy might be compromised more than we're comfortable with. So while we're here laughing at the absurdity of algorithms suggesting products based on overheard conversations or sleep-talked pizza cravings, there's this serious underpinning about user consent and data security. We need clarity, like who's keeping an eye on how far these algorithms go and are there checks in place. It's critical to find that balance where innovation doesn't steamroll our personal boundaries. What's your take on enforcing more stringent controls around this?
Oh, spot on, Joe. The humor softens the blow, but it's clear we're tiptoeing around bigger privacy issues. It's one of those laugh so you don't cry situations, huh? But yeah, talking about stricter controls could be a whole saga. Makes you wonder who's watching the watchers, right? How do we keep the tech innovators in check without stifling creativity? Maybe that's something we should chew on more. What's your take, folks?
You know, Simon, this whole thing opens up a can of ethical worms. It's like brands are skating on thin ice between being genuinely helpful and downright manipulative. What do you think is crossing the line in today's branding strategies?
Yeah, Joe, it's like walking a tightrope with this stuff. Let me toss in a story here that kind of hits on what you're getting at. So I remember this one time I bought this face cream, right? It was all over my feed, marketed as the ultimate natural remedy. Big green leaves on the jar, the whole 9 yards. Turns out the product was like barely natural. The company had mixed in a lot of synthetic stuff, but still slapped eco-friendly all over it. Felt super misled. Man, that's what got me thinking. We talk green, we talk ethics. But if it's just for show, like where does that leave us regular folks relying on their honesty? Makes you wonder about the fine line between smart marketing and tricking your audience, doesn't it? What keeps a brand from crossing into that murky area?
Oh, completely, Simon. It's pretty murky, like you said. When brands use these big emotive words, natural, eco-friendly, it feels genuine at first glance, but digging deeper, sometimes it's just smoke and mirrors. Here's the kicker for me. There's a moral line, right? And it seems some brands toe it delicately or just straight up leap over it with practices like greenwashing. They're banking on that feel-good reaction from consumers without delivering on real ethical commitments. The question then becomes about transparency. How do we ensure it? It's almost as if we need a universal truth in advertising kind of standard that goes beyond borders. It could hold companies accountable to what they claim, really ensuring that if a product says sustainable, it has the credentials, audits, or certifications to back that up. What do you think? Does this sound like a step in the right direction, or is it over-policing creative marketing?
Oh, for sure, Joe. Adding those checks sounds like a solid plan, but boy, would that ruffle some feathers. You can almost hear the boardrooms buzzing from here. What? Prove our claims? But it's just marketing. I know, a shocking concept for them. But seriously, transparency is key, right? Like, slap a label on it all you want, but if the proof isn't there, what's the point? We might need this truth in advertising playbook to clean things up. Predicting backlash, though, imagine the PR spin, now with 100% more honesty. Could be a tough sell, or maybe the best thing we've seen yet. It'd definitely keep everyone on their toes. The vibe could shift from sneaky to straightforward overnight. Theoretically, of course. What's the open feeling out there about pushing for this, you think? Too big brother or just enough adult supervision?
Haha, now with 100% more honesty. That's a tagline I can get behind, Simon. But seriously, it's like pulling back the curtain on Oz. Everyone loves magic until they see the wires, right? It would definitely shake things up.
Totally, Joe. Pulling back that curtain would sure rattle some cages. Kind of reminds me of this time. I was at this big electronics store, right? Looking for a new phone, and I see this huge flashy sign, most ethical smartphone ever. Made from recycled materials, low energy consuming, like the holy grail, you know? So I asked the guy working there to break down what that all actually means. Turns out, recycled meant only like 10% of the materials were recycled. The rest, just the usual stuff. Talk about a letdown, huh? It really got me thinking about how much spinning is being done. It's one thing to claim it loud, it's another to live up to it, right? It wasn't just that they made it sound more eco than it was. It felt kind of disrespectful, like assuming I wouldn't dig deeper over fancy titles. Can't go throwing words around if they're hollow, just breeds mistrust. Don't you think we gotta keep companies accountable so these claims actually hold some water?
Oh man, Simon, that's a perfect example. It's like they're dressing it up, right? Throwing in just enough truth to make the lie palatable. It's super misleading. And yeah, totally disrespectful. Trust is huge. Once it's broken, good luck getting it back. Keeping them accountable, absolutely. But how do we, keep that pressure on without becoming like those annoying watchdogs that nobody wants around? What's your take on striking that balance?
Right, Joe. It's all about that balance, keeping them honest without turning into a full-on nag. Maybe it starts with us, huh? Consumers pushing for transparency and backing brands that actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Rewarding honesty could shift the market way more than we think. Would be interesting to see if companies would step up if they knew we were watching closely, choosing our wallets as our weapons of choice. What's everyone else think? Can consumer pressure really shape better branding ethics, or are we just dreamers hoping for too much?
Totally, Simon. Speaking of consumer power and brand transparency, it's fascinating to think about how new technologies like VR are flipping the script. Envision a future where you can virtually try products before buying them, like stepping into a virtual store that's as real as your local mall, but all in your living room. Imagine trying on sneakers by just clicking a button or walking through a full-scale model of a car you want to buy, all using VR. It could really change how we perceive what's genuine and what's just glossy advertising. What's your take on this VR shopping future? Might be wilder than anything we've seen yet.
Joe, that VR shopping spree sounds like a roller coaster. It's insane just thinking about it. Like, imagine slipping on those VR goggles and suddenly you're in a high-end fashion store trying on the latest trends. But wait, do these digital jeans actually make my virtual butt look big? Kind of surreal when you think about it. But here's where I get skeptical, right? How do we know what's real in a world where everything can be optimized, adjusted, or let's say enhanced? Slipping into that digital wonderland might just blur the lines even more between quality and clever constructs. Sure, it's cool to test drive a car on Mars, but if the suspension feels smooth there, what does that tell me about handling potholes back on Earth? It could definitely spice up shopping, turn it into something out of a sci-fi novel, but doesn't it also kind of inch us closer to buying into fantasies rather than products? What's your angle on this, Joe? Are we gearing up for a consumer revolution or just a fancier illusion?
Haha, Simon, man, you just hit a home run with that analogy. Slipping into these VR scenarios could be both mind-blowing and a bit deceptive, right? It's like, are we really getting what we see, or is it all smoke and mirrors optimized for VR? You bring up a killer point about VR potentially creating a gap between expectation and reality. We might end up living in a world where the hype overshadows the actual quality of products. Sure, it's cool to drift along Venice's virtual canals in a gondola while shopping for Italian shoes, but if those shoes fall apart the first day you wear them in real life, that's a problem. It sounds like VR could revolutionize how we shop by offering experiences that are out of this world, literally. But there's got to be some ground rules to keep things honest. Maybe there's room for VR to include real feedback, live reviews inside the experience, keeping things transparent. What do you think, Simon? Are we looking at a future of exciting possibilities or just setting ourselves up for more sophisticated letdowns?
Oh man, Joe, weaving in live reviews right there in the VR world. It's genius. Sort of a reality check inside the virtual realm. Keeps everyone honest while still having fun with the tech. But here's a twist. What if brands start to manipulate even those aspects? We might be diving headfirst into a layer cake of realities. What if it gets to the point where we can't tell the difference anymore? Is it a feature or a bug? This is turning into sci-fi quicker than I pegged my jeans this morning.
Oh man, Simon, sensory marketing is like the Jedi mind trick of the business world. Brands are tapping into our senses to subtly persuade us where to drop our cash.
Yeah, sensory marketing does sound fancy and all, but dude, when you think about it, isn't it a bit like cheating? I mean, hitting us right in the feels with smells and sounds to get us to buy more. Like, take Starbucks, right? You walk in and boom, that coffee aroma hits you. It's no accident. They've got that smell on lock to make you crave a cuppa, even if you just had one. And Apple, man. Those stores with their sleek design, hands-on product displays, cool lighting. It's like stepping into the future just to check out a phone. They're crafting this whole vibe, making you feel part of something bigger, innovative. But here's where I scratch my head, Joe. Aren't we kind of being manipulated by our own senses? These brands are playing puppeteer with our feelings to open our wallets. So yeah, effective? Totally. But there's a fine line between engaging and exploiting, don't you think? Where should we draw that line?
Whoa, Simon, that's like actually a pretty intense thought. Sensory marketing, it's all around us, and I hadn't even pieced it together till now. Seriously, think about entering a Starbucks. It's not just coffee, it's that signature scent, right? It totally draws you in, and suddenly you're buying a latte or some pastry because why not? And Apple, man, their stores are almost theatrical. You walk in, and everything from the lighting to the layout is designed to make you go wow and feel like you're part of something cutting edge. They're not just selling gadgets, they're selling an experience, an identity. But, here's the kicker. Are we being subtly controlled by these sensory cues? It's super effective, yeah, but it also feels a little manipulative when you break it down. It's fascinating, but also a bit unsettling to think how our senses guide us, often subconsciously, into making purchases. What do you reckon, Simon? Is there a point where this kind of marketing becomes too much?
Oh yeah, Joe. It's like we're all just Pavlov's dogs salivating at the ring-a-ding of sensory cues. Think about it. Every time that coffee scent wafts over, it's not just coffee. It's a full-blown espresso-scented orchestra playing in your brain. But seriously, it's spooky cool and kind of Twilight Zone when you break it down. We're wandering through these stores, and everything's been dialed up to make us feel, something. Whether it's like feeling cozy from a smell or just futuristic from sleek gadgets. And isn't it wild, Joe? We might walk into a store for, say, socks, but leave with a whole wardrobe because touch got involved. We felt those fabrics and our senses went, yes, please. Manipulative? Sure feels like it sometimes. But hey, marketers are just doing their job, right? Providing sensory experiences so good we can't resist. Makes me wonder if there'll come a day when popping into a shop feels more like entering a spa. Relaxing tunes, perfect lighting, a spritz of sea breeze. Come for the socks, stay for the sensory indulgence. So, where do we draw the line, Joe? Is this just smart marketing, or are we sliding into sensory overload here?
Haha, Simon. Maybe next time we'll need a sensory fast just to make sure we're buying socks and not the whole sensory package. It's like every shopping trip is turning into a mini vacation for our senses. Where's the line? Maybe it's wherever our wallets start to scream for mercy.
Haha, true that, Joe. Maybe we should start wearing nose plugs and earmuffs to keep our wallets safe next time we hit the mall. It's like entering a battlefield unarmed otherwise.
Yeah, Simon, you're onto something with those nose plugs and earmuffs. But call me a skeptic. I think we might need more than just sensory blockers to safeguard our choices. It's like we're fighting not just smells and sounds, but the whole psychological game. Like, take smell, right? For instance, there's actual science showing scents can make us happier, less stressed, even willing to spend more cash without realizing. It's wild. So when brands use that knowledge, they're tapping into deeper layers of our brain stuff, way beyond just convincing us their coffee tastes good. And sound, it's another sneaky one. Slow music can make us shop slower, linger longer, and yeah, probably spend more. Fast tunes get us moving, make quick picks, like grabbing things without thinking too much. It's fascinating, but also sort of like disturbing. So really, are we ever truly making free choices in these primed environments? It kind of feels like walking through a meticulously crafted play where we're both the audience and, unknowingly, the actors. What's your take on this, man? Are we cool with being subtly directed, or should there be clearer lines here?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Diving into the deeper end of the sensory marketing pool gets you all tangled up in how subtly we humans can be influenced. Seriously, these tactics are grounded in some meaty psychology and neuroscience stuff. It's not just hocus pocus, it's real science making us shop till we drop. For instance, let's hammer down on scents. There's research piling up that shows scents can significantly affect how long someone stays in a store. Like, if a place smells like vanilla or citrus, people feel more relaxed and tend to browse longer and, spend more money. Major retail chains have been using this trick for years. They pump specific scents through their ventilation systems to create that ah moment every time you step inside. And then there's sound. Scientists found that music at certain tempos can directly influence walking speeds around stores. Slow beats make folks slow down, soak up the ambiance, and more likely snag extra items. Fast tracks, they get your energy up, speeding up decision making and boosting those impulse buys near cash registers. But here's where it gets dicey. When does it become too manipulative? When you peel back the curtain, you've got these brands orchestrating every sniff and note to hit just right. And before you know it, your senses have taken you on a shopping spree you weren't planning on. So it's kind of like we're dancing to a tune we didn't choose, which is cool for vibes, but maybe less cool for autonomy. Where do you draw the line between influence and manipulation, huh? What about setting up guidelines to keep things fair? Or are we okay letting our senses lead us astray once in a while?
Man, it's like we're literally shopping with our senses, not our brains. Maybe we need a consumer's guide to sniffing out these tricks. What do you think, Simon? Ready to write that guidebook?
Oh man, Joe, smell or taste, which heavyweight champion of the senses really hooks us into brands? This is like picking your favorite ice cream flavor at a gourmet parlor.
Uh, that's a tough one, Simon. Smell and taste are both such powerful players in the branding arena, right? Like, on one hand, smell can trigger memories so strongly. Just think about how a whiff of sunscreen can take you right back to beachy summers, right? And brands, they use this all the time, like stores pumping out cookie scents to make us feel all warm and nostalgic. But then there's taste. Man, once you've got a flavor locked down, it can hook folks for life. Remember Coca-Cola? They pretty much own the cola flavor profile. Once you get a taste, it sort of defines cola for you from then on. So, what do you think makes a bigger impact, Simon? Is it the smell drawing us in, or the taste locking us down?
Oh, Joe, it's like picking between pizza and ice cream. But let me toss this in. I kind of lean towards smell, man. It's just so sneaky powerful. You think about how a scent can bring back memories, instant and strong. Like when you sniff the same cologne your granddad wore, bam, you're like 5 years old again, yeah? But then, oh boy, taste. It's super compelling too. Like with Coca-Cola, sure, they've got flavor on lockdown, but isn't it also the fizz, the pop, maybe even the sound when opening the bottle? However, where I see smell taking a bit of an edge is in its mysterious ninja-like sneakiness. You walk past a bakery, that waft of fresh bread. Oh man, you weren't even hungry, and suddenly you're buying 3 loaves. Unlike taste, smell doesn't always require direct engagement. It's swirling around us, whether we're actively sniffing or not. So if we're talking brand loyalty, those scents might just be more influential because we pick up on them without even trying. What's your angle, Joe? Are you convinced about the power of puff over the punch of flavor?
Simon, I'm totally with you on the stealth power of scent, man. It's wild how a smell can just catch us off guard and pull at those emotional strings without even trying. Like that fresh bread example? Spot on. Makes me hungry just thinking about it. But then there's taste, right? It's direct, personal, deeply satisfying in a way that smell kind of skirts around. Taste has this upfront, no sneaky business vibe. When you eat something amazing, it hits you right in the soul. So yeah, while smell drags up all these fuzzy memories, taste sort of stamps its flavor, right? What we're experiencing in the now. I guess both are MVPs in their own rights, but from a different angle. Smell is all about setting the scene, stirring up those lost memories without making a sound, like a secret whisper. Really sneaky, like you said. But taste? That's more like the main act, bold and memorable in its own right.
Haha, right on, Joe. It's like smell is the sneak attack and taste is the knockout punch. So here's a curveball. Imagine combining both for the ultimate loyalty recipe. What kind of super brand would that create? A sensory powerhouse where you can't forget them, even if you tried.
Yeah, Simon, imagine that. A brand that can master both scent and taste? It'd be like stepping into a flavor and aroma wonderland, right? Think about it. Every time you walk by or even just see their ad, there's this rush of familiarity and comfort because your senses just totally recognize the vibes. But man, seriously, what kind of products would really excel at blending those two together? Like, could you picture walking into a cafe where the blend of aromas and tastes is so distinct that you just can't help but become a regular? Or maybe even something less obvious like tech gadgets. Imagine if your phone smelled like vanilla each time you picked it up. Kind of wild, huh? So, what do you think, Simon? Are there any brands out there now that you think are close to hitting this sensory sweet spot? Or is this still some future fantasy stuff?
Oh man, Joe, that's such a futuristic concept. It's like sci-fi meeting marketing. But if we're riffing here, I'd say cafes and bakeries already nail this combo of smell and taste. They've got the whole atmospheric vibe locked down. Once you smell coffee brewing or bread baking, it's nearly impossible not to wander in and take a bite. But pushing into tech with scents? That's out there, dude. However, gimmicks aside, it straight up highlights how potent blending these senses could be. Now, whether it's coffee or cologne, companies mastering both scent and taste, even if metaphorically for non-food items, would pretty much be embedding their products into our daily rituals. Still, I think your idea of a cafe, where everything is scientifically designed to offer a distinct aroma taste branding experience, is closer than we think. Maybe no one has hit the perfect mark yet. Or indeed, recognized both equally in offering an all-round sensory identity big enough to be iconic worldwide, like how Apple did with design. So until then, seems like we're shopping around in the experimental phase, don't you think, buddy?
Absolutely, Simon. Those cafes and bakeries might just be the pioneers of the sensory branding frontier. It's like they are subtly schooling every other industry on how powerful this combo can really be. Whether someone gets it right globally and becomes a sensory apple, time will tell. But imagine the possibilities in other industries if they nailed both attributes. That'd reshape consumer loyalty on a massive scale. So let's keep our senses peeled for who takes the lead on this, huh? What will grab us next? Smell, taste, or someone who finally figures out how to fuse them perfectly?
Oh, Joe, brace yourself. Let's dive into some of those chuckle-worthy flops in sensory advertising. You know, the ones that make you go, what were they thinking? Grab your popcorn because this is going to be good.
Oh man, Simon, do I have a story for you? This one time I was walking past this perfume store. They had decided to go all in with an aggressive new scent campaign. So there's me, just trying to get to the other side of the mall, and wham, wham, hit by what I can only describe as a ode to gym sock. It was like they mixed up the labels with a prank novelty shop or something. People were literally stopping in their tracks, sniffing the air confused. And not just one or two, but everyone passing by seemed to be part of this accidental smell test. The real kicker? The store staff didn't even seem to notice at first. They thought traffic was picking up because of the new promo. Man, it took them a while to figure out that maybe infusing the entrance with essence of intense workout wasn't drawing people in. It was freaking them out. You had folks making detours just to avoid the stink zone. It was hilarious in a you gotta be kidding me kind of way. So yeah, you'd think someone would have given it a whiff test before going full blast, right? But hey, lesson learned. Always double check your sensory cues unless you want to clear out a crowd instead of bringing them in.
Oh man, Joe, that's like a comedy sketch. Seriously, who greenlights these things without a sniff test? It's kind of genius in a disaster sort of way. Total sensory sabotage. But hey, live and learn, right?
Absolutely, Simon. Live and learn is right. But it's not just perfumes that can tank. Sound can turn into a sensory disaster too. Like, there was this fast food chain, I won't name names, that decided jazzing up their drive-through with loud, peppy tunes would be, invigorating. Turns out, blasting energetic beats where people are supposed to order from a squawk box doesn't mix well. Folks couldn't hear themselves think, let alone speak. You're trying to order your burger, and instead, you're shouting over the chorus of some pop hit. Got so many complaints they pulled the plug in less than a week. Makes you think, huh? Even a good idea needs a solid, reality check before going live. Energy is good, but not when it drowns out your customers trying to ask for no pickles on their burgers.
Oh, dude, that sounds like a real mess. It's like, how did they not think about the practical side of things there? Vibrant tunes are cool and all, but man, not when you're just trying to order some food. It's funny though, imagining people yelling their orders over the latest pop track. I mean, can you even picture trying to hear extra fries over a blasting beat? So, this makes me wonder, Joe, do these hilarious flops make brands shy away from trying bold stuff later? Or do they kind of brush it off and dive right back into the deep end with new ideas? What's your take?
Yeah, Simon, that's a good point. I think when these missteps happen, they're kind of mortifying in the moment for brands, but they often bounce back stronger. See, each goof is let's say a little treasure trove of what not to do info. Brands can kind of dissect what went wrong and why, which really informs their next moves. So instead of shying away, many companies use it as a springboard to revamp their strategies. They still go bold, but with improved insights. It's like once you've accidentally cleared a mall with Oda Gym Sock, you're probably not going to repeat that mistake. You learn, tweak, and try to be innovative in safer, smarter ways. And let's be real, sometimes these blunders make for good stories later on. Bet those brands got some unexpected attention and maybe even sympathy laughs. It builds a more human connection with customers who see them fumbling and trying again. So it's messy, but definitely part of the learning curve in sensory marketing.
Totally, Joe. It's almost like these brands are telling their own epic comeback stories. Who doesn't love an underdog or a comeback kid, right? Plus, I bet those blunder to wonder tales keep things super interesting in the marketing boardrooms.
Oh, totally, Simon. Imagine sitting in those meetings after a major flop must be like all right, team, who's got the next brilliant idea to shoot us into the headlines for better or for real this time or worse? It's the kind of adrenaline rush you don't find just anywhere. And hey, imagine if they handed out awards for these things, like Best Recovery from a Marketing Mishap or Most Memorable Scentsaster. That'd keep things pretty lively, huh? Plus, it'd be a good reminder not to take things too seriously and maybe even inspire some creativity. Who knows, Simon? Might be the start of a new wave in advertising. Learn fast, fail fun.
I get where you're coming from, Joe. That sounds pretty fun and all. But on the flip side, let's think about this. Handing out awards for mishaps. Isn't that kind of like celebrating the mess rather than the mastery? I mean, sure, everyone loves a good blooper, but putting too much spotlight on those slips might, make brands a bit reckless. Like companies could start pushing wild ideas not for genuine innovation, but for the buzz. Even if it means another scent saster just to snag some ironic trophy. Remember, man, every marketing fail costs real dough and can really ding a brand's reputation. So yeah, while we chuckle at these gaffes, leaning too hard into them might, take the focus off what advertising's really about. Connecting with people meaningfully and effectively, not just making headlines for epic flops.
Yeah, you're right, Simon. There's definitely a delicate balance between learning from those crazy missteps and not turning them into publicity stunts. We want creativity, not chaos for the sake of it. Guess we'll just have to keep an eye on how brands navigate these waters, huh? Who knows what clever or cringeworthy sensory adventures we'll run into next? What other wild stories are out there waiting to be told, right?
Oh, you know what, Joe? Speaking of where brands could go next after recovering from missteps, how about we dive into the future possibilities with all this tech evolution? Like virtual reality and augmented reality AR are stirring up some real buzz in marketing. It's like stepping from one world, riddled with lessons from the past, straight into another filled with these immersive experiences. How wild is that going to get, huh?
Yeah, Simon. Diving into VR and AR is like opening a new frontier in marketing, man. But here's the thing. While these technologies offer insane possibilities for immersive experiences, there's lots to unpack about how effective they'll really be. Like, sure, strapping on a VR headset can transport you to, let's say, a concert or a remote beach from your living room. Super cool, right? But then there's the accessibility barrier. Not everyone has the gear or is even comfortable using it. Plus, how deep do these experiences go? If a brand wants to create a truly memorable campaign, they've got to make sure it's more than just novelty. They need to nail it with authentic connections that resonate deeply with their audience. And looking ahead, as we get more advanced tech, could we see marketers aiming at other senses too? Like, imagine sensory suits that let you feel temperature or textures, or flavor-enhancing devices that tweak how food tastes based on what you're watching. It gets pretty sci-fi. So, the potential? Huge. But also, loads of hurdles to jump over before this becomes everyday marketing. How do you see brands balancing between wow factor and practicality here?
Oh man, Joe, you hit the nail on the head. It's like walking a tightrope between whoa, that's awesome, and but does it actually work? And let's not forget, the freakier it gets with stuff like flavor-changing gadgets, the more people might just tune in for the gimmick. But isn't there a part of us that's just itching to see how wild it can get? I mean, who wouldn't want to taste a virtual burger or feel virtual sun on their face from a beach 1,000 miles away?
Absolutely, Simon. The itch to experience those outlandishly cool sensations is real. With VR and AR technologies growing rapidly, the fascination isn't just hypothetical anymore, it's plausible. Like, in terms of market growth, International Data Corporation predicts that by 2023, global spending on VR and AR will reach about $160 billion. That's up from around $17 billion in 2019. Man, that's massive. And brands are already experimenting with these immersive realities. Take IKEA, for example. They've launched an AR app where you can see how furniture looks in your space before buying it. And then there's travel companies using VR to let customers visit destinations before booking their trips. But as tech evolves, ethical considerations are key. How do these experiences affect users psychologically? What about data privacy? The technology isn't just about selling, it's about responsible innovation too. So yeah, the potential for mixing VR and AR with other sensory elements holds a sort of sci-fi appeal. Imagine enhancing a virtual concert with scent generators that match the beach party vibe, or changing food flavors to match a scene in a movie. The trick, though, will be integrating these awe-inspiring technologies seamlessly into daily life, ensuring they're accessible and genuinely enhancing user experiences without crossing into overwhelming or gimmicky territory. Brands brave enough to tackle this balance, they're set to redefine engagement. What do you think could be the standout application of this tech, Simon?
Oh, the possibilities are practically endless, Joe. But imagine this. Fashion shows where you can feel the fabric textures through a sensory suit as models walk down the virtual runway. Now, that's a game changer. How much cooler does it get than actually feeling the future of fashion at your fingertips?
No kidding, Simon. That's a total game changer. Gives touch and feel a whole new meaning in online shopping, too. Makes you wonder, what's next? Smell-o-vision making a comeback in a high-tech jacket? The future's looking wild.
Oh, absolutely wild, Joe. But here's where I might rain on the parade a bit. As much as these sensory suits and smell-o-vision jackets sound like sci-fi heaven, we've got to ask, uh, do people really want all that? I mean, isn't there a charm to the simplicity of, let's say, flipping through a magazine or walking into a store? Sometimes tech solutions solve problems we don't have, pushing us towards a future maybe only a handful really asked for. It's cool, but could be overwhelming too. What if it turns out to be just a high-tech hassle? Adding layers of complication to simple joys in life might not be what everyone's looking for.
Simon, I get you, man. There's definitely a fine line between enhancing our lives with technology and overcomplicating them. It's like sometimes you just want to touch the actual fabric or smell real leather, not through sensors or screens. That tactile, simple experience, it has its own unbeatable charm. And yeah, overwhelm is real. We're already navigating so many gadgets and apps. The idea of strapping into more tech just to shop might not be everyone's cup of tea. It makes you think, are we moving towards solving genuine issues or just inventing new ones to justify complicated tech? Still, though, it's fascinating, right? The potential there, but keeping tech human and accessible, that's the challenge. How do we make sure this future tech doesn't leave behind the real essence of experience? What's your take on striking that balance, Simon?
Oh yeah, Joe, spot on. It's that balance that's going to be crucial. Look, as we push into this future filled with VR suits and AR shopping apps, we've got to remember to keep it real. Literally. Ensuring these technologies enhance rather than replace the human experience will be key. Will they enrich our lives or just complicate them? Well, only time will tell. And speaking of time, isn't it wild how fast things change? What's next could be something we haven't even dreamed of yet. What do you think the next big unexpected twist might be?
Absolutely, Simon. The pace of change is incredible. Speaking of innovations that sneak up on us, look at sonic branding. It's not as flashy as VR or AR, but think about how a simple sound can make a brand instantly recognizable, like the iconic Intel Bong or McDonald's I'm Lovin' It tune. These sounds play a massive role in how we perceive and remember brands, tapping deep into our subconscious. What's your take on the power of sound in branding?
Oh, sonic branding, huh? Honestly, Joe, at first blush, it feels like just another gimmick. I mean, sure, who doesn't know the bong of Intel or the catchy McDonald's jingle? They're stuck in our heads forever, whether we like it or not. But here's where I scratch my head. Does this really sway people's decisions deep down, or is it just a clever trick to get our attention? Now, don't get me wrong, those tunes and sounds can be wicked effective as memory hooks. Psychologically, they're doing something sneaky, sort of weaving into our daily soundscape and attaching feelings and memories to brands without us even noticing much. But still, gotta wonder, are we giving these little ditties too much credit? What's truly drawing us to a brand? Is it the products or just those catchy beats?
Simon, that's a legit point you're making. These sonic hooks, man, they're like earworms, right? You hear them once and they just latch on. And it does make you pause, thinking, is it just about snagging our attention, or do these sounds genuinely enrich the connection we feel with a brand? But here's the thing, it kind of works both ways. In a way, these jingles create a soundscape that, sprinkles a little extra something on our perception of a product. Like every time I hear that Intel bong, there's this instant recognition, a sense of reliability, technology, progress. It's more than just catchy. It feels like part of the narrative they're selling. And you asked if it's the products or the beats drawing us in. Tough call. Sure, quality matters a ton, but those sounds, they add flavor, make the experience a bit richer. It's tricky, but fascinating how something as simple as a soundbite can play such a big role in branding, huh?
Yeah, Joe. You're spot on with that take. The whole soundscape they're building does have its charm. It's like they slip into our day to day without us even noticing, branding our brain space while we're not looking. Fancy, huh? But do you think this sonic branding stuff is kind of making things too, like, formulaic? Like every big brand's got to have their own catchy jingle or unique sound just because it works, without really adding much to the real experience? I mean, when does it start feeling less like a cool addition and more like a checklist item for marketing teams?
Oh, I see what you're saying, Simon. But here's the flip side. While it might seem formulaic to have every brand sport a sonic tag, there's solid reasoning behind it. It isn't just a trend they're mindlessly following. Like, from a marketing standpoint, sounds can actually be more powerful than visuals in evoking memory and emotion. Research, shows that our brains process music and sound in a direct way, interfacing with our emotions, making it a potent tool for creating long-lasting brand associations. And stats give this weight too. Recall rates for sonic branding hit as high as 96%, compared to visual logos sitting around 80%. That's massive. So when brands jump on the auditory gimmick, it may seem routine or tick boxish, but they're tapping into deeper psychological principles to etch their brand on consumers' minds. Yeah, it's becoming common, but only because it's super effective at building a subconscious bond with customers. Sure, it might be neat to see out-of-the-box strategies beyond sound, but if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Oh, speaking of out of the box, can you imagine a world where brands ditch the jingles and just, go silent? I mean, what if the next big marketing strategy is no sound at all? How eerie yet utterly fascinating would that be as a way to stand out? Silence as the new jingle.
Simon, that's a wild idea, man. Going completely silent? In a world bombarded by noise and constant stimulation, silence could really stand out. It's like when you're in a super noisy room and suddenly all goes quiet. That silence hits differently, right? Makes you pay attention. But here's the thing. While the absence of sound can be powerful, iconic audio logos have this unique ability to travel with us. They transcend language barriers and cultural differences, making brands globally recognizable. Take Nokia's ringtone or Netflix's startup sound. They're instant identifiers worldwide. Creating an audio logo that sticks isn't just about a catchy tune. It involves deep understanding of brand identity and audience. It's like crafting a musical piece that embodies what the brand stands for, all packed into just a few seconds. And their impact? Massive. These sounds trigger emotional responses that can boost consumer loyalty and recognition on a huge scale. So yeah, silence could be a cool novelty, but the lasting power of well-crafted sound, it's proven its worth. What do you think? Are people ready to embrace the quiet, or does the charm of a distinctive sound still hold more sway?
Oh, silence as a statement. Bold move. But let's face it, Joe, in our go, go, go world, a brand going silent, that'd kind of be like finding a unicorn at a horse race. Refreshing and unexpected? Absolutely. But those catchy tunes are pretty tough to beat when they make a brand feel like an old friend just by sound alone.
Absolutely, Simon. You've nailed it. Those tunes really do make brands feel like old friends. Speaking of which, it's fascinating how these iconic audio logos came to be and the sheer impact they've had on global brand recognition. Like take McDonald's "I'm Lovin' It" or HBO's static sound before shows. These aren't just catchy beats. They're carefully crafted to embody the brand identity and stick with us. How about we dive into some stories behind these famous sounds and see what makes them really click with audiences worldwide?
Oh, speaking of those iconic sounds, it always takes me back to my college days. There was this little diner by campus. Every time you'd walk in, they played the same nostalgic pop hit from the 80s on loop. Not exactly a global brand or anything, but man, did that song stick. Anytime I hear that tune now, bam, I'm right back there, cheese fries in one hand, textbook in the other. It's kind of like these big brands using their audio logos. That diner knew what they were doing, anchoring their atmosphere in our brains with a melody, much like how McDonald's or HBO crafts those snippets of sound that just echo through your memory long after you've switched off the screen or finished your burger. It's clever stuff, making something as everyday as a jingle part of your personal story. What about you, Joe? Ever had a sound take you way back like that?
Oh, for sure, Simon. Sounds taking us back. Happens all the time. Every time I hear the PlayStation startup sound, bam, I'm a kid again, just lost in gaming for hours. But here's where I might stir the pot a bit. While those nostalgic tunes from a diner or iconic sounds like PlayStation are massive hooks, not all audio logos have that magic, right? Many try, but only a few stick and actually do what they're supposed to. Build that deep brand connection. Consider some local commercials where their jingle feels more like noise than a branding masterstroke. It's a delicate balance, crafting a sound that's pleasant enough to remember, but also distinctive enough to not blend into the background. Lots of them miss the mark. So when we talk about these successful audio logos from global brands, there's this whole behind-the-scenes play of psychology, music theory, and marketing savvy. It isn't just about having a catchy tune. It's how well it reflects the brand ethos and connects emotionally with consumers. Is it as universal as McDonald's or as niche yet powerful as HBO's sound? What's your thought on this competitive space of branding through sound, huh?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. It's like walking a tightrope with these sounds, right? Too much one way, and it's an ear sore. Too subtle, and it's background noise. But get this, imagine if brands had to swap their audio logos with each other for a day. McDonald's Bing Bong for HBO's Static? Now that'd toss things into wild chaos, huh? Would kind of show which ones truly hit the mark, or just blend into background noise.
Haha, Simon, that's a hilarious thought. McDonald's Bing Bong before Game of Thrones? The chaos would be real. It'd be like wearing clown shoes to a black tie event, totally out of place. But man, what a way to see which sounds really capture the essence of their brands and which ones are just skating by.
Right? That'd be a hoot. But digging into these audio logos, some are steeped in really clever creative work. Take the MGM Lion's Roar. That's not just any old lion growl. It was specifically tailored to symbolize majesty and strength of the studio's movies back when films were just silent shadows flickering on walls. And here's another top nugget. Nokia's ringtone, that catchy classical guitar riff, is actually based on a piece of classical music from the 1900s by Francisco Tárrega. They chose it because it had a timeless, universal appeal, which clearly worked, because who doesn't know that tune? Then there's Skype's opening soundscape. They aimed to craft a sound that felt like communication coming to life. It needed to be friendly, inviting, but also tech-savvy. Loads of thought goes into this, far beyond just what's catchy. Honestly, Joe, the effort these companies pour into just a few seconds of sound is wild. It's art and science smushed together, trying to bake up the perfect sensory branding cookie.
Yeah, Simon, that's wild. The thought and precision that go into these tiny fragments of sound. It's like sculpting a miniature masterpiece that has to stand the test of time and cross cultural boundaries. It's not just about being memorable. It's about evoking the right feeling every single time it hits the ears. So, considering all this detail and effort, do you think the average listener ever picks up on the depth of these sounds? Or are they just subconsciously soaking it in? Do people realize how much a sound logo is shaping their perception of a brand? Or is it more like a background process for most folks?
That's a spot-on question, Joe. Most folks probably aren't dissecting every beat of a sound logo in their heads, right? It's one of those things where the craft's brilliance kind of flies under the radar. Let me toss this story at you. It's like when I first taught my nephew to ride a bike, right? Initially, he didn't really grasp how every little adjustment he made was about balance and motion, but instinctively he felt what worked and what tossed him sideways. Similarly, with these sound logos, people might not consciously realize why they're drawn to a tune or a jingle, but deep down, it just feels right because of how it's crafted. The trajectory is set by the engineers and designers who understand the psychology behind that instant connection. And from my own strolls down memory lane, it's those unspoken cues we soak up without even trying, like how certain sounds can immediately calm us or pump us up. We don't always think about why, but respond almost reflexively. Brands bank on that autopilot mode, crafting sounds so meticulously that they become a natural, nearly invisible strand in the fabric of our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely, Simon. It's like these sounds are the stealth ninjas of the marketing world, sneaking into our brains, setting up camp, and we're none the wiser. Just goes to show, sometimes the most powerful influences are the ones we barely notice.
You know, this whole ninja approach of sounds sneaking into our psyche is spot on. It makes me think about those peculiar twists where companies have really swung for the fences with their sonic branding, like some really kooky attempts out there. I read once about a fast food chain that tried to mix a chicken clucking tune with techno beats. Talk about bizarre. Let's just say it didn't quite become the chart topper they hoped for. Ah, but such are the adventures in sound identity, right? What's the funniest flop you've heard of, Joe?
Oh, Simon, that's hilarious. A chicken techno mashup sounds, well, it's definitely out there. Speaking of bizarre attempts, there was this one where a car rental company tried to use the sound of honking horns mixed with laughter. They thought it'd evoke a sense of joy and freedom in traffic. Like, imagine that. Instead, it just ended up irritating customers who didn't find being stuck behind a wheel quite so amusing. And then there's this toothpaste brand that experimented with a jingle made entirely of brushing sounds. The idea? To evoke the freshness of brushing. But man, the sound of bristles on teeth over some airy melody turned out more cringe than fresh for most folks. It just goes to show, Simon, not all creative swings hit home. Some you strike out, but I guess you gotta applaud the courage to be different, right? What about successes? Any wild but surprising wins in these sonic branding adventures you can think of?
Oh man, yeah. Those are some classic blunders. Gotta say though, for every flop, there's like sometimes a weird little gem that shines, right? Take this snack company that used sounds of people munching and crunching to the rhythm of some funky jazz. It was odd, super odd, but somehow it caught on. It turned their brand into this cult favorite for folks who loved their quirks. But seriously, Joe, I think it comes down to knowing your audience. Like that toothpaste brushing tune? No go for most. Yet, turn up some zany music with munching noises, and suddenly you've got a hit. Makes you wonder if there's some secret recipe, or if it's all just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
All right, folks, if you're just tuning in, me and Simon have been diving into the wild world of sonic branding, the hits, the misses, and the just plain bizarre. Like, we've chuckled over some hilarious flops, a fast food chain mixing chicken clucks with techno beats, a car rental spot using honking and laughter, which didn't quite bring joy to anyone stuck in traffic. And then there are those unexpected wins. Take this quirky snack brand that synced munching noises to funky jazz, odd but somehow totally clicked, turning them into a cult favorite. It's a mixed bag, really, showing that knowing your audience is key, because sometimes even the strangest ideas can stick. Isn't it just a wild ride in the world of branding sounds?
Totally wild, Joe. It's like each brand is tossing out their own flavor of audio magic potions. Some brews enchant us, while others just, well, they fizz out spectacularly. Makes you wonder what the next big or bizarre sonic hit will be, doesn't it?
Oh, dude. Exactly. It's like they're all mad scientists in their labs, cooking up these potions, trying to find that magic formula. And hey, half the fun is seeing which ones blow up the lab and which ones actually change the game. You bet I'm always on the lookout for that next wild sound that just clicks. What crazy new trend do you think we'll be hearing next, Simon?
Joe, with how fast trends pop up and fade away, I'm betting we'll see some brands taking stabs at blending virtual reality sounds into their logos. Like imagine putting on a VR headset and hearing a distinct sound that just transports you straight to the brand's world. Immersive and all-consuming. But here's where I might throw in a cheeky prediction. Maybe we'll get an audio logo that's just silence. Think about it. In our loud, non-stop world, a bit of unexpected quiet could be the boldest statement out there. Crazy enough to work, or is it just too out there, you think?
Oh, Simon, diving into VR soundscapes sounds like we're heading into some seriously futuristic branding territory. Using immersive audio to transport someone? That's next level engagement. It's somewhat rooted in sensory marketing, where brands use senses to affect perceptions, like how brands in the past used smell or touch in stores to enhance consumer experience. VR could just be the digital extension of that. Now, onto your silent theory. That's intriguing and not as far out as you might think. There's historical precedence with similar tactics in visual media, at least. Consider John Cage's 433, a musical piece comprising entirely of silence, prompting listeners to hear their environment as the music. Applying that to branding could give folks a pause, making them reflect on what's missing, perhaps creating a memorable, quiet space amid the noise. So, both ideas have roots in real strategies, even if they seem out there. Makes you wonder what'll catch on in this echo chamber of brand identities, huh?
Totally, Joe. It's fascinating when you think about how these sensory layers mesh together in our digital age, pushing the envelope with VR, creating immersive spaces. You're spot on about it being an extension of sensory marketing. Kind of flips the script on engaging with a brand, doesn't it? Now, about that silence gig, isn't it intriguing to considering what's not there to make a statement? Like if brands decide to carve out a pause in the clutter, could that become the next big disruption or just pass into the background unnoticed? Curious, Joe, do you think the average consumer is ready for such a bold, minimalist approach, or does the allure of more vibrant, packed sounds still hold the upper deck?
You know, Simon, that's the million-dollar question. With everyone bombarded by nonstop content, a slice of silence might just be radical enough to stand out, or it could slip under the radar. Are consumers ready for it? Maybe it's not about readiness, but necessity. Perhaps what we need is a break from the chaos, a sonic palate cleanser, if you will. Could lead to a whole new era where less really is more in branding. What do you think? Brilliant or just wishful thinking?
Oh, Joe, diving into this idea of minimalism and breaks from chaos, it kind of slides right into the bigger picture of where sonic branding is headed next. Like considering all these innovations on the horizon, specifically things like AI and bioacoustic data, it really opens up a can of worms about how brands might get even more savvy or sneaky with their sound strategies. You know, using AI to tailor sounds that hit our emotional buttons just right. It's kind of mind-blowing, but also stirs up some ethical questions. What do you think about the balance between technology driving engagement versus maybe, I don't know, manipulating our feelings a bit too precisely?
Yeah, Simon, that's an area packed with as much potential as it is peril. Using AI and bioacoustics to fine-tune audio branding, it's like wielding a double-edged sword. On one hand, we get incredibly personalized experiences, making each interaction feel like it's made just for us. But on the flip side, knowing our emotions can be so precisely targeted by a machine does bring up some serious ethical concerns. It's a tightrope walk between innovation and invasion. And hey, folks, that wraps up today's deep dive into the intriguing world of sonic branding here at Infinite Podcast. Thanks to everyone who tuned in and joined us on this auditory adventure. Make sure you hit us up again tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. We've got more fascinating topics to unpack that you won't want to miss. Until then, stay curious and keep those ears open.